What is going on, Bills fans? I am Lance Nelson, president of Built in Buffalo, and this is the Triple Coverage Podcast on the Built in Buffalo Podcast Network. To my right tonight is Anthony Romeo, and to my left is Tasker Brown. Gentlemen, if you would unmute yourselves and say hello. How we doing tonight?
What is up? Good to be here with you, man. I missed the hoof last night. Eric and I were I was out of town and he was on dad duty. So we had to not do a show, but we're going to be ready for the regular season. And I'm glad I could hop on tonight with you guys to at least get some action in this week.
Yeah, as soon as I saw you weren't going to be doing a show yesterday, I said, all right, well, you'll be fresh for tonight then.
That's
That'd be
right.
great. So I appreciate your time. And
flew back home today so I could do the show.
What a guy. And then in his first Built in Buffalo live show appearance, Tasker Brown. How are we doing tonight, Task?
Good. Glad to be here.
Good. Tasker's down in Charlotte. He's been doing a lot of cool stuff for us graphically and things like that. Helps me behind the scenes with triple coverage. So glad to get him out in front of the camera. And, he'll be pinch hitting when Ben or Scott can't make it from time to time here and there. So glad to have you, Tasker, and appreciate all the help all the time here. So let's get right into it, man. So preseason's basically is over for the starters in Buffalo, and Josh Allen threw 3 passes. So guys, I just want to know, what do you think about, the preseason reps? And we'll start with Josh Allen and then, work our way through a couple other positions there. But Anthony, I'll start with you. And what do you make of, what Josh Allen got in the preseason and how does that roll? Into the season, I guess.
Certainly, the obviously Josh Allen is your star player. Everything runs through him. So the coaches have to trust that he's going to be ready for the season. And I think in this case, the fact that he doesn't have those reps, they feel he's fully ready for the season. He's got different guys around him, but he's been working with them all off season and everything. And again, getting this close to the actual start and the prep work for week 1 now, the Arizona Cardinals, I think that's what's happening is they're just saying, okay, Josh, you've done enough at this point. We know what you've got. Plus, we're talking about Josh Allen here, but the fact of the matter is we don't have a backup quarterback who's got reps. So not only is Josh good with the reps, but the fact that we need to get reps for the other quarterbacks, it just made sense this week for Josh to, still run through. He still gets the motions, all those new players are still getting action out there, and it's just not with QB1 under center. And we can all have faith that when it is Josh Allen's time to go, that this team is going to be ready and at its best at that point in time. There might be still some growth in the beginning, building the chemistry and real game action with the new guys, but this team's going to be ready, and I'm not too worried about that at this point in the preseason.
Yeah, what about you, Tasker?
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's Josh Allen. 3 passes. I would have liked to see him get a few more reps with the new guys, Curtis Samuel, Keon Coleman, get that chemistry built. But it's Josh Allen. He's ready to go week 1. He'll be fine. He'll like Anthony said, he'll build more chemistry as the game goes on against Arizona. And like he said, QB2 they need more reps. So they're the ones that are going to need to be in there come tomorrow.
Yeah, and I think Josh Allen said it early on that he didn't even need a preseason in his mind. So I know that he's going to be out there and ready. It's just a matter of there's a couple things. Let's talk a little bit about the wide receiver reps, though. Are we getting a fair evaluation of some of these wide receivers when Josh Allen isn't throwing them the ball? I know they're not always going to get the ball. There's no guarantee that Josh is going to be playing. But geez, some of the quarterback play we've seen throughout this preseason has been rough. And you had Keon Coleman dropping the ball in the end zone there on what I said was a poorly placed throw and a wobbly one from Mitch Trubisky, although Joe Marino and all the other Aaronesses said that he should have caught it. And that's fine. That I was talking to Tasker before we jumped on here about how people can listen to or see the same thing and come away with two completely opposite takeaways. And that was one of them. I think that when you talk about what these wide receivers are seeing, and are they getting a fair evaluation in your mind, Anthony?
I think that again, you have to trust that the coaching staff knows what they're looking for and knows the situations they're in. In other words, they're not just looking at, oh, well, he caught it or he didn't catch it on this play. It's about how well they're doing their job on the play, right? Sometimes it's blocking, sometimes it's just run the route and take the coverage away from the guy who's the target, or it's, he ran a great route and he was open, but the quarterback screwed up. So that's not this guy's fault. So they're watching that both in live action during practice and when they're rewatching it, and rewatching tape and everything. They're saying, okay, here's what we're seeing from this guy. He's doing everything right. And just because he hasn't been given the opportunity with Josh Allen doesn't mean we're not thinking highly of him at this point. And it's tough to say, because it's because of the quarterback that they're not good enough or whatever. I think that, again, if the coaches are making the decision to cut a guy or to put a guy on the roster, it's a full body of work that they're looking at, not just, oh, well, he caught the most passes from Josh Allen and he didn't make any boneheaded plays, so he makes the roster by default. I think it's more of building that trust. And you mentioned, I did want to bring up that debate over whether Keon Coleman should have caught the ball. To me, that's like the dumbest thing I've ever heard Bills Mafia argue about. This is a rookie in training camp. I don't give a crap that he didn't catch the ball. I'm happy he got a rep with a ball in the end zone with a guy covering him. That's all I care about. It's preseason. He didn't make the catch. I don't care. As long as in the regular season, he's seen that action now. He knows how to make the catch and when to make the catch. And he told the coaching staff whether he did or did not go all out on that play and whether it was or was not the quarterback's fault. It's a moot point in my mind. He got the rep in the red zone. That's what makes me happy. It was real coverage. It wasn't practice, and hopefully that is what he builds on and learns from as the season starts. And Eric and I have both talked about on the hoof and all over this network that Keon Coleman is not going to be the guy on day one. That's just not how it works for most rookies, but also especially with Sean McDermott and the Bills. He's going to be worked in the right situations to build up to being, one of the top wide receivers on this team. He's not just going to walk in the door and be handed it and have the expectations at that level. No, he's got to earn it a little bit. And I'd say that about all these guys, right? Not just with Josh Allen out there. Yeah, some of them haven't been given the reps with Josh Allen, but to me at this point in the off season or building up to the season, that wide receiver room is getting clearer in my mind. We know who's going to be there, right? Chase Claypool taken out of the situation pretty early there. So now it seems like maybe that, will they keep 5? Will they keep 6? That could be the question. Who's going to be that 5th guy and the 6th guy? That's up for debate, but it's a lot clearer picture now of who's going to be catching the passes when Josh Allen's out there for good.
Yeah, what are your thoughts, Tasker?
Yeah, I mean, I don't need to see Keon Coleman stretching, going out for that ball into the preseason and getting hurt and being out for the year. That's just dumb.
No.
He ran a good route. He got separation. That's all you need to see. I've seen a bunch of receivers have gotten good blocks. I know Tyrell Shavers had a nice block. Ray Davis run in last game. They're getting good blocks. They're blocking. They're running good routes. They're getting separation. Like Anthony said, bringing the DB off the coverage. We don't need stat stuffers. We don't need heroes in the preseason. They don't need to be catching 4 or 6 catches, 120 yards, and 2 touchdowns. It's the preseason. Would I like to see us score more than 6 and 9 points? Absolutely. But the QB play hasn't really been there. But that's because it's not Josh Allen. And put Josh Allen in there, a lot of those balls are going to be caught. But yeah, I don't need to see receivers necessarily going up for balls and getting hurt, and they'll do that week 1. And I agree, the room's getting a lot clearer. There's a little bit of a fight for the 4, 5, 6 spot. Those guys will need to prove themselves tomorrow against the Panthers, but other than that, it's getting clearer.
Yeah, I wish for more reps between Allen and some of those receivers to selfishly be able to try to figure out exactly what we have, where he's going to prefer to get them the ball and just maybe get some things on that. But obviously, they don't necessarily want to show that to others either. So that makes sense that things were limited. Obviously, anytime he goes out, then that risk is going to be higher than the reward of any sort of preseason rep, because like Anthony mentioned, there's plenty of reps there in the camp practices and things like that, in those controlled settings where they're getting their evaluations and able to do those things with Josh Allen. So they don't necessarily need that. I think the one thing is game action is just a little bit different. And Anthony mentioned how Keon Coleman got that rep in game action down in the red zone with real coverage, and you're not getting that all the time. Not that guys aren't playing hard in practice on the Bills side from the defense, but they're seeing each other every day. They're teammates at the end of the day. So, that's one thing that I think is worth mentioning. And two last things about this is how much will the starters reps in the preseason factor into week one, and how much does it factor in that week one is against Arizona? So Tasker, we'll start with you. I mean, give us your thoughts on, factoring into week one. Do you think there's going to be some rust there? And then what does it mean to you that it's going up against the Cardinals? Do you think there's more wiggle room, more leeway for the Bills to kind of get up to speed given their opponent on week one?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot more wiggle room with it being the Cardinals. It's definitely going to take a little bit, maybe 1 or 2 drives, hopefully not any more than that, for Josh to get full chemistry with the new guys, Curtis Samuel, Keon Coleman, Mac Hollins. I mean, it's a whole brand new room, so he's going to have to get used to it. I think the coaches must have seen enough in practice where they don't need to throw him out in preseason and get all those reps then. I think it'll translate. I mean, the new guys like Keon Coleman, just getting those reps in preseason will translate over to week one against the Cardinals. And like I said, it's the Cardinals, so hopefully it's gonna, have a little bit more wiggle room and leeway with it being the Cardinals.
Yeah, what do you got, Anthony?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you'd never underestimate an NFL opponent. The Bills are going to prep the week the same way they do, whether it's Kansas City or, a last place team, or in this case, it's week one. You don't even know who that team is now, right? They've got Kyler Murray back. They've got a lot more weapons. One of the best players in the draft, obviously, in Marvin Harrison Jr. But, am I expecting anything like a tough matchup from Arizona? No, I do expect that the Bills should beat a team like that pretty easily at home. We're the better team by far, the better roster, but that's not how the NFL works, right? Sometimes the better team gets their butt kicked. However, I do think that this is a good first game to have on the schedule for this team, getting those reps in a real game, building that chemistry like we talked about. They've done it all off season, and I'm confident that Josh Allen's going to be confident and comfortable back there doing what he does best. But the production is probably going to take some time from these guys. So if anything, I'd expect Khalil Shakir to be the star week one, right? Because that's the guy Josh Allen has the most chemistry with on the team, and Dalton Kincaid, right? You can make an argument there. But in terms of wide receiver room anyway, it's Kincaid, and then, it's Curtis Samuel, because he has experience and he's shown what he can do. That would probably be my second, assuming he's back by week one, which, from what we've heard from McDermott, it does seem like that's going to be the case, which is great. But yeah, you have to put up or shut up, right? So now it's once it's week one, we'll know for sure where this team is at and what it means. And, maybe we'll look back and say, well, I wish they would have gotten more reps and stuff in the preseason against real opponents. But I do think we can put more stock in what they've done from, mini camps all the way up until now to see that, yeah, these guys, they know what they're doing and they're ready for it.
Right on. Yeah. I believe that being against the Arizona Cardinals gives the offense some time, because the Cardinals defense probably isn't going to be the best, but also the Cardinals offense may not be really, they may be able to come out and put some points on you if you're not ready. Now the defense has played more than the offense, so the defense is able to get those reps in. We saw Gregory Rousseau absolutely manhandle the right tackle there for the Pittsburgh Steelers, Broderick Jones, excuse me. name escaped me for a minute there. So, and that's a big second year tackle. I get it, but a lot of pedigree there that he's, manhandling. So, defense definitely did get their reps in, and the offense didn't, and that's why we're talking more heavy offense. I see some comments here regarding the D and things like that, and we're going to get into the Bills Panthers preview. But before we do that, I just wanted to shout out to our sponsor, Buffalo Belia Sports and More. If you guys are on Facebook, go check out Buffalo Belia Sports and More and get in their room. They'll give you a chance to win some cool merchandise. I just got a Dalton Kincaid mini helmet from last week's Squares, and you can pay, was it $13 or $15 and get into a Squares pool and end up with a signed mini helmet or something. So it's really cool. Frank's doing a lot of cool things over there with that room. I'm going to drop the link to the room in the comments here if you guys want to go ahead and use that to check it out and join the room and get in on the action. That's Buffalo Belia Sports and More, and proud sponsor of Triple Coverage and Built in Buffalo, and also Monster Energy Drink, the official energy partner of Built in Buffalo. And then I'm wearing a nice t-shirt from our partners over at Buffalo Go. So head on over to builtinbuffalostore.com and check out the merch there from Built in Buffalo. And then also check out Buffalo Go's website as well for all their great merchandise. So let's move on and let's get into a couple of questions here from the comments. Is Andreessen playing tomorrow? Yeah, I would expect he's going to start, and he's going to play a heck of a lot, if not the entire game. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in a few, but yes, Andreessen's going to play, and he's going to play quite a bit, I would expect, on that. Anything to add to that, guys?
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do. It's Carolina's ones, so seeing what he can do against Bryce Young, seeing if he can guard, if he's still a sure tackler like he showed last week. So I'm looking forward to him playing against the ones.
Yeah, exactly. I want to see if he pops. He's probably one of the main players I am watching in this game because I want to see that last game. Obviously, he truly popped on the field. You could take the numbers off the guys, and you're pointing at him on the field, right? And I want to see if that feels the same in this game. To me, that would cement his spot on the roster if he even shows up, if he even looks that good as he did last week.
Right on. And assuming maybe this is one of Tasker's buddies here, maybe, but he wants to know who's guarding Amon-Ra and Sam Laporta, who's the Bills' Week 15. We're talking about a game in December here in August, and but hey, it's a comment. I'm gonna talk about it if you guys want to. You guys are the viewers here. Let me know what you want to talk about. We'll pull some random stuff up. The Bills play a zone scheme typically, so there's not going to be one person guarding Amon-Ra St. Brown or Sam Laporta. They're going to be bracketed in a zone probably. If I need to pick a guy, Rasul Douglas is very capable. Christian Benford's very capable on Amon-Ra, and Teron Johnson's very capable if he's lining up in the slot. And then Laporta, Matt Milano would be a stretch to be back by then, but they did say December, and that's a December game. So I don't think they're necessarily going to put him out there on the field in Detroit, given the recent history. But, Matt Milano, Terrell Bernard, and Teron Johnson would be all candidates to bracket Laporta. So come back in, what is it? 18 weeks from now, and we'll be doing the preview on December 13th. We'll come watch us on December 13th.
It's one of the games I actually have circled. I'm trying to go to that game in Detroit. I have a friend there who, is a big Detroit fan, and we've been friends for a long time. So we've both suffered through hard years together, and now it's like both are expected to be good this year, and that game should be a great matchup, and I'm hoping I can make it to that game. So hopefully it's as big of a matchup as it is in week 1 when it comes around in week 15, because that is we hopefully both teams are doing well and are healthy at that time of the year. That's all you can ask for. Yeah,
we drove to Detroit. I don't remember what year it was, but it was a good time back in the 2014-15 range. One of the years we played there. And it was a good drive, but it's only a 40-minute flight from Buffalo, so it's super
Mhm.
easy to hop over from Buffalo to Detroit. And if you're flying over there, and had to do that many a times for work travel, so used to that trip, and man, pretty nice. So yeah, it's hop, skip, and a jump over there, and it'll be interesting because the Bills, have some injury history there on that field. So be looking forward to it. Tasker, it was your friend. It's only right if you roast him instead of me, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. Just like you said, Rasul Douglas, Christian Benford, they'll lock Amon-Ra up quite nicely. And then with Laporta, yeah, Terrell Bernard, it would be nice to have Milano, but it's not likely. But Bernard will do. He'll fill that spot to cover Laporta quite nicely, and Taron Johnson.
Right on. All right, let's be back in the here and the now and be where our feet are, as the Bills like to say, and get on with the game tomorrow. Bills versus Panthers preview. We talked a little bit about Panthers ones playing versus the Bills backups, and how Joe Andreessen would be one to watch when we're talking about who's going up against the Panthers ones. And I'm going to be looking at the defensive line still being able to hopefully generate some pressure. We'll see if they're saying no starters will play. I assume the starting defensive line is not going to be out there either, and we'll see what that means for some of these guys like Kingsley Jonathan. If Solomon can give it a go and see if he can continue his impressive preseason so far. And I think that it'll be nice to see guys from Carolina specifically, like Adam Thielen and Terrace Marshall, guys that maybe have been talked about around the circles of being potential targets for the Bills to maybe make a trade. So give me your thoughts on Panthers ones versus the Bills backups, and maybe a guy or two if you think on Carolina that you'd be looking to watch for one reason or another.
Go ahead.
Right, Anthony.
All right, for me, I mean Bryce Young, right? He's had a terrible start to his career last year, and it's like, what is this guy really gonna do? And now it's preseason, and for some reason he's only getting action in this last game. There's weird things going on in Carolina for sure, but it's his first action, and just as a fan of the NFL, I want to see how he plays, right? And what chemistry can he build? It's a new regime. He's had time to build with better receivers, better offensive line, all that. So what kind of quarterback play are they going to get out of this guy who was, a very high pick, obviously, and very high expectations. So him for sure. And then I'd say the wide receivers in general on both sides of the ball, the Bills and Carolina, are going to be watched carefully. And I don't know if I'm on the trade market train just yet, but I do think that the Bills are keeping their eyes open for, we might not need him right now, but in 4 weeks, if he becomes available and they're, willing to deal, then maybe that's an important piece that we need to pick up for the value of it. Right. And they're already evaluating that, I think, in this offseason on other teams for guys that they could poach potentially at that position specifically, I'd say. Because I don't think that they would prefer to go to the depth on the practice squad should Curtis Samuel, for example, be out for a little longer than expected. I would rather they get a veteran player like an Adam Thielen or something like that to come in and fill the same kind of role that we're expecting from Curtis Samuel. Not that it would be at the same level, obviously, but same type of role nonetheless. So I think that's going to be where my eyes are mainly. And the Buffalo Bills quarterback play. Can we please see a pulse from somebody at quarterback? Anybody out there? I mean, I feel like I can do better at this point, which is not where I want my team to be at the backup quarterback position. So I know both of the quarterbacks that are going to play were just added in the last 2 weeks. So, I mean, expectations are, have to be that has to be calculated into the expectation. So maybe there's an errant throw here or there, but some sort of life, because honestly, Mitch Trubisky has been terrible this offseason. And obviously Shane Buechele, who we started with and did most of the offseason with, has the injury and is not going to be available either. So we need somebody out there to show life, even just as the number 3 for the season. Otherwise, if we don't, then it's going to be shopping for 2 quarterbacks to bring in. One is the backup, one is the third. And yeah, obviously that's not an ideal position to be in leading up to week 1.
Yeah, Tasker, go ahead, buddy.
Yeah, I'm watching Bryce Young too. I want to see if he can take that step up from last year, his little more so lackluster first year. I want to see if he can take that step up, but more so, I'm excited to watch Bryce Young because I want to see how the Bills secondary, how their 2s and 3s can play against an actual QB1. If they can shut him down, then that's a great sign. Or even just get an interception maybe, or just anything really. And then I'm also looking at the running backs. I'm eager to see how our second string D line can stuff the run. Same with can Andreessen still shoot the gaps like he was last game. We had a little bit of an wishy-washy run defense against the Bears in preseason week 1. Seeing if we can get that step up, if we learned in practice, if we can stuff that line a little bit more, shed blocks and get more tackles for losses.
Solid.
Good. Yeah, I think I kind of gave mine in the beginning about the ones versus the backups, and looking at Carolina to see if there's any guys that may be available and useful for the Bills. And now we're going to go into a few battles that you're intrigued about on either side of the ball. And we're going to start on offense. If you watch, I'm going to talk a lot about the offensive line when we talk about positional things and stuff. I like to focus on that group and seeing more of where Alec Anderson is playing, when he's playing, Cedric Van Pran Granger coming in. Are we seeing Will Clapp, and where are we seeing him, and those kind of things. So focusing on the interior of the line, seeing, when they play, where they play, how much they play, and maybe that helps you get a bigger picture of where they're at in the pecking order and how they're stacking up to one another as well. So I'm really looking forward to that battle of the different, because I don't think that Will Clapp, Van Pran Granger, and Alec Anderson are all going to make the roster. So that 3-person battle kind of boils down into probably 2 spots, in my opinion. And you do have Keaton Bills kind of getting some reps there, but I feel like he's at this point going to be a practice squad guy at best, and moving on there. He hasn't shown much that warrants the roster spot. So those 3, Alec Anderson, Will Clapp, and Van Pran Granger, are going to be my battle to watch on offense. And let me know, what are you guys watching? What's your favorite battle on offense to feel like there's a chance for an underdog, or even just this is a position you like to watch and evaluate, and those kind of things. So what do you have, Anthony?
Immediately it's the wide receiver position that comes to mind, just because we've talked about it's not those top 4. Those are pretty much cemented in. It's 5 and 6, 5/6, right? They might only keep 5. But if 2 guys really show out in this game, and they are already held in high regard. So I want to preface it with that, right? If somebody goes out there and has 3 touchdowns and looks amazing, but they've been on the bottom of the pecking order all offseason, then that's not going to suddenly inspire the Bills to keep that player, right? If they're still going to get cut because it's down to a few players, but I do think it's still open as to what that final decision is going to be. So I'm looking for consistency, again, not just in catching the ball and getting yardage, but route running and plays out there and blocking, all aspects, special teams, right? If they play special teams, I think those wide receivers who are in the running, right? I mean, we know who we're talking about here. Tyrell Shavers, you've got MVS is expected. I don't know. The way McDermott talked, he seems like he'll be ready for week 1. Potential short-term IR candidate, maybe, but if he's ready, I think he is part of that mix as well, which kind of disappoints me, because then it's like, okay, are you making room for a Shavers, and are you cutting all the rest of the guys who were there, Shorter and everybody else? I think the return position is one that's still going to be played the same way it has been all off season. It's still open. You're still getting a a chance. Daquan Hardy and KJ Hamler, right? They're going to be out there and getting chances to show and say, hey, I'm the guy for this job. Right now, my expectation is that KJ Hamler is going to get cut and that it'll be Daquan Hardy's job. But, does that leave room for another guy to make it? I don't know. But, the wide receiver is one that definitely comes to mind. And we've already talked about quarterback. I already mentioned that. That's definitely – I just want to see life from somebody where it's not like you don't want the quarterback to be the reason everybody else on offense looks like crap, right? It's not the offensive line's fault if the quarterback holds the ball for 6 seconds, right? Like sorry, you're sacked, right? Like, and same thing with the wide receivers. It's not the wide receiver's fault if they're consistently getting open in coverage against what should be the starters on defense for Carolina and, just not getting the ball because the quarterback doesn't see them or doesn't know the play or whatever else.
Right. Good point here from John. Will Clapp, I'm not sure that he's out of concussion. I haven't seen anything that says he is. I know he's held out of practice yesterday. So there's a chance he doesn't play. But again, that all goes into it. Does he need to play and those kind of things as far as, what
interesting note there.
What his chances are.
I did not have Will Clapp on my May 53-man roster. So but now I do think he has a good chance. Versatility for any player is there. But I think of the guys you mentioned, Van Pran Granger, I would expect to make the roster just because you don't want to expose him for other teams to potentially poach as a backup or whatever. I think Alec Anderson is probably going to make the roster as well. So I do think Clapp
I feel like Anderson's probably a lock at this point.
And I think Clapp is the odd man looking out there. Maybe he makes it, but on my list, I didn't have him.
Yeah, one more question from John. Mike Edwards, I don't believe he's going to play. He's working his way to play week 1 from everything I've seen and read. So I would not expect Edwards to get any time. He's going to be looking to be ready for week 1. So Tasker, what do you got for as far as a battle you're excited on the Bills offense? And then if you'd like, just flip it right into what you'd like to see on defense as well, and then we'll roll right back around.
Yeah, I'll just talk about the quarterback battle just for a little bit since we've already covered it a little bit, but just anything, just more than one first down on a drive. Just want to see if DiNucci or Brown can go out there and put something together, put at least a scoring drive, hopefully more than a field goal. Just so, like Anthony said, we can see the O-line work, we can see the receivers work, we can see everything put together because we haven't really seen that the first 2 weeks.
I think you really want me to get my free Tim Hortons. That's what you want, the 2 touchdowns so that I can get my free medium Tim Hortons coffee.
Exactly.
And I really appreciate that sentiment from you. That's
I'm just looking
very kind.
Yeah, so I just want to see some more stuff from the offense. It's been a little lackluster, but another battle I'm looking forward to is I don't think they'll keep 4 tight ends, but just throwing that out there. Trey McKitty versus Zach Davidson. Can one of them go out there and prove, hey, you should keep 4 tight ends? Are they going to go out there and put a showing together that shows the Bills that they need to keep them? I don't see them keeping 4, but they might even, with Quentin Morris's injury, they might even just go ahead and keep Davidson or McKitty, vice versa, if they go out there and prove what they can do, because they haven't really proved too much the first 2 games. But they'll definitely be fighting, so I'm looking forward to that. And then for the defense, really just that the safety number 2 safety spot. Obviously, Taylor Rapp's a lock. Is it going to be Hamlin? Is Bishop going to be available? Is Mike Edwards going to be available? Obviously, we're not going to see Bishop or Edwards tomorrow, but can Hamlin go out there? Or if Hamlin might not even play either, but can somebody go out there and show that they should be that number 2 safety, or at least even the 3 or 4 backup safety?
Right on. Anthony, what do you got for the defensive side of the ball tomorrow that you're looking at?
I mean, obviously, we already talked about Joe Andreessen. I think he is the story there on defense. It's almost like everybody else is going to be a blur, and I'm going to be trying to find him on the play. But again, what I want to be able to do is him find my eyes because of his play on the field. That's exactly what it was in the last preseason game. Sure. I was just like, wow, he's out there for the, when he was out there, I'm like, oh, hey, yeah, that's the kid from Buffalo. And then all of a sudden, wow, who made that play? Oh, shoot, that was him. He made that play. All right. And then it was play after play where we saw that consistency of him going after the ball and being right where the tackle is and having
Easy to look
influence
for
and
that
impact.
number being a Syracuse guy,
I
right?
know, right? 44, baby. Let's go, right? So, I mean, yeah, it's going to be my eyes are going to be on him because I think at this point, if he even does, because of the need at the linebacker position and the fact that he's shown such potential, that the Bills are going to want to keep him around on the roster. So unless there's a reason to not keep him, I think he's made the roster at this point in my mind. But if he continues to just play ball the way he plays ball, then he's going to prove it for himself. The safety position has been for me the concern all off season in terms of like bodies and who's going to be there but for this game specifically, I think whoever's going to be playing out there is going to be cut. It's not going to be one of the guys we're going to actually see make this roster. So it's certainly not going to be a position I'm paying attention to in this game unless for some reason, I don't know, Hamlin's out there or something that they're just trying to get reps because these guys haven't played right most of the offseason. Everybody's been injured there. And yeah, so I just the safety position I don't trust, but I'm not watching. Cornerback, I love our cornerbacks, and I think I'll be paying attention to how long some of these guys stay out there. You know what I mean? So like Ingram and Kyer Elam, for example, they're not starters, but they are valuable depth pieces to this team. So do they only play a quarter and then you throw some of these other guys out there, or is it going to be, a half and let them, show us why they deserve to be such valuable depth players? Yeah, other than that, I think that's the big ones on defense. And earlier, Jared mentioned the defensive line, which is huge, right? That's a big place where the run defense, I did like that comment. Like, yeah, you're right. I should pay attention to that because the Bills have been getting banged up with the run game. And if the starters for some reason, need rest or whatever, I don't want that to happen again this year. So I do think that that's going to be tough.
Yeah, I'm going to look at the line again because there's a battle there as to how many defensive linemen are going to be kept. So you have Deshaun Williams on the outside looking in chance, I think, at making this roster going up against his former team. And then you have guys just, Cameron Klein, Casey Toohill, I'm sure he'll get some run. Javon Solomon, what does he look like? And just, can we see some of the battles that are taking place for these last few spots on the defensive line? Because probably only keeping 10, and it's a matter of 5-5 or 6-4, and then which guy offers the most versatility. You have Rousseau and now Smoot, who can also swing inside if they need to. So that lends me to believe, and we're going to go through a little of our roster projection, that the triple coverage team, Tasker had a part in it, Ben Shoup and Scott Casson and myself, we all kind of came up with a 53, and we're going to review it with an outsider here, Anthony Romeo, and see what he thinks about what we came up with live here on the show. So, but yeah, those guys that battle for the interior defensive line spots. It hasn't looked like the coaching staff and things are super impressed what they see out of Dwayne Carter just yet. So it'll be interesting to see if they give him a little more time playing to just get more eyes on him, or if they'll cut him short earlier on in the game. I assume he'll go out there to start being head of the second unit, but we'll see where that goes from there. And that's all the nuance of what some of these things mean in a meaningless game from a score point. Who's playing, how long are they playing, and who are they playing against? So when Carolina takes their ones out, who stays in the game or who comes out for the Bills, and that's going to matter a little bit, I think, for what that means for their roster position.
Yeah, it's still a battle, even though it's the last preseason game, right? There's always NFL action means something, right? As much as we like to say, preseason doesn't mean anything, it does to those guys who are fighting for those last few roster spots or the practice squad spots even, right? I'm watching this game, the whole game, to pay attention to who stands out in terms of ranking the roster for practice squad, right? Even though most of those guys are going to get cut, it won't surprise me even sometimes to predict, oh, hey, some team's going to see this guy and want to sign him if we don't, either to their practice squad or maybe even their active roster. So yeah, those battles still matter. Those snaps still matter.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move into it then. I'm just pulling up my prediction from June, or when we made our initial roster projection, and then we're going to put up here our projection we just came up with this week, and see a little bit for what you guys think. So right now, I will say we didn't try to get fancy. We're going with who's on the roster right now. So QB2, because of Mitch's injury and everything we're hearing from, guys like banged up Bills and things, that Mitch is just not going to be ready with his MCL for week 1. And so Ben DiNucci's the next kind of guy. I don't necessarily think Ben DiNucci's going to be QB2 going into the season. And we can talk about that in a moment, but just wanted to clear the air. Like, he's there by de facto. He's the guy on the roster, the next guy up, that played behind Mitch. And we went with 6 wide receivers, 3 tight ends, 9 offensive linemen. And then on defense, went with 6 defensive ends, edge rushers. I kept Kingsley Jonathan on in there over a Casey Toohill because of special teams play. So that's one of those things this week where I mentioned Casey Toohill playing. Let's see, can he play his way on a roster? Is he already on there in their eyes? I mean, if he doesn't play at all, maybe that says something more. We kept 4 defensive tackles. And again, didn't have Deshaun Williams as part of that group. And then 5 linebackers was a little bit surprising, just the way we were talking about it and came up with, because Milano was out. We kind of put an extra safety in there in Cam Lewis and went with the 5 linebackers. So that's going to be a point of discussion here in a little bit. But let's first talk a little bit about Josh Allen and Ben DiNucci at quarterback. I mean, there's plenty of options for Bills to make moves for a QB2, and just how important do you think it's going to be to go out and get somebody after this preseason game to bring him into the building?
Hopefully completely irrelevant, right? Completely irrelevant. Doesn't matter who's standing there. Doesn't matter if it's Patrick Mahomes on the sideline, as long as they're standing there and they don't do anything, because Josh Allen's healthy and plays the whole game. And, even at the end when we're up by 40 points, he's still taking the knee out there maybe. So, yeah, I mean, I think that ultimately Trubisky does matter in my mind at this point, because he's been the one right next to and in Josh Allen's ear. I hope ultimately he's at least able to be on the sideline. That's what matters to me. If he can carry the clipboard and talk to Josh Allen the way he has all offseason, the way they have in the past, there's that chemistry there. So I do think there's some value to having Trubisky there and making sure he's there on game day. But other than that, you hope that it's completely irrelevant. But if it's one of these guys, it certainly doesn't inspire confidence in QB2.
Yeah, I agree. Hopefully it doesn't come to needing a QB2, but I mean, even if it's just for one of those funky, Josh comes up with a calf cramp and has to come out for 2 snaps, you don't want to just have to run the ball twice in a row on like 3rd and 15 and just give the ball over. You would like to have a guy that can go out there and throw the ball. Trubisky has been there for Josh, so I would prefer having Trubisky. But I mean, even DiNucci, who has had starting time in the NFL, well, not good starting time, but he's done a little bit. But yeah, I do think having a better QB2 is important. But like Anthony said, hopefully it doesn't come to that.
Yeah, and are you willing to give up anything, draft capital or anything, to get one, or you think the smartest thing to do was wait till after cut downs and see who comes out of that, and maybe pick up a guy who was cut?
I imagine that's what I would do. I don't, unless it's throwing away a 7th round, maybe, but even then I would just hold on to what you have, look for a guy that fell off, didn't make a team's roster, and if he's better than DiNucci or Brown, then go ahead and sign him.
Yeah, there's been some names floating out there, and I think that ultimately, because the Bills are a contending team and are good, that those backup quarterbacks are gonna they know they're not gonna get a chance to start, but that if they could be the 2 instead of another team's 3 or practice squad guy, then they'll take that opportunity, as it comes probably. So
Ain't
we'll
nothing wrong with
see.
Silver.
Even what?
Ain't nothing wrong with Silver being the number 2.
If who's the number 2?
Said there's nothing wrong with Silver being the number 2.
Oh, instead of the starter. Yeah, behind Josh Allen, if it wins you a Super Bowl, hell yeah, right?
Yeah,
I'll
absolutely.
take that job. But I ultimately I think what could end up happening, and I was thinking about this, the new emergency QB rule of you get
Right.
a guy on the practice squad. Maybe they keep Trubisky on the roster, even though he's maybe a iffy for week 1. And DiNucci gets cut and is on the practice squad as the 3rd, for example. Can they, with that rule, call him up for week 1 as the emergency quarterback in case something were to happen and not have to use a 53-man spot on him? It's going to be interesting to see the gymnastics that they do there on
I think they
cut-down
would
day.
have to have Trubisky be able to go out and play a snap at least, and then say
Right.
he got hurt on
Right.
that snap,
Yeah.
and then be able to put in.
Right.
So that would be interesting. Yeah, it's this with some of these injuries, it's kind of impossible. And we'll put this back up again just to get another talking point here. I think the running backs are what they are, right? You have Cook, Davis,
Mhm.
Johnson, and Gilliam, right? Do you guys have any comment on that? Is there any doubt in your mind that the 3 running backs at least, and then Gilliam is like
That's the
you think you got to keep him, but it's like is that a guy where you could get a 4th tight end on and not have Gilliam? Knox can maybe do some of that stuff, but I really think they do like Gilliam in that spot.
Yeah, it would be a surprise to me if they cut Gilliam, but the question it wouldn't be out of the question because of the new special teams and all that new kickoff. Maybe they decide, Gilliam's role isn't going to be as valuable as keeping a 6th receiver, for example, who can be back there on
returns
or something.
Right.
Yeah,
I
I
don't
could
predict
see
that, but
yeah, I could see them cutting him, but I don't think it'll happen. He might not be as valuable on special teams, but he's still going to be a guy that's going to be out there on special teams. And he's been a guy that has proved he has worth on his team. So sure, you could throw a guy like Knox out there, but do you really want? I mean, I think Gilliam's the better option out there.
Right. Yeah, so receivers, we left guys like KJ Hamler off, Andy Isabella, Justin Shorter. I mean, what do you make of the Shakira Coleman, Samuel, Hollins, MVS, and Shavers 6? I mean, do you see a guy like Hamler because of his return, even though he didn't show
yeah.
out well, he muffed some things. I think Andy Isabella would be the better play over Hamler personally, but and then what do they think about Justin Shorter? Maybe we see more of that tomorrow to see what do they, how much do they value him? How much is he out there? I know they stashed him last year, but it doesn't seem like he's made too many waves just yet.
I do think that ultimately it comes down to 5 or 6 wide receivers, as we've said. And if MVS is healthy and expected to make the roster, um, that leaves a lot of question as to whether somebody else will make it. I have kind of said that KJ Hamler had a shot and lost it. I actually predicted that when they made their first depth chart. I'm like, look, they're giving him a chance, but I think this is just for show for now, and he's not going to make the roster. And ultimately, I do think that's going to be how it ends up. And Shavers, you make a good point as in terms of wide receiver and what he's done, and he's shown a lot. But does that outweigh somebody else's role on special teams or whatever, like a Justin Shorter, a bigger body guy who can play special teams? It wouldn't surprise me if they went that direction instead. But ultimately, if I'm looking at this list, to me, it's 5, and I'm leaving Shavers off. So that would be the only change that I would make here. It's 5, and there's a reason for that, because when we get to other positions, I'm going to tell you where I'm adding. But yeah, I think it's tough because I like Tyrell Shavers and I'd love to have him on this team. But again, if I'm making the argument for 6 wide receiver, I think Justin Shorter actually has the edge in terms of what else he can do on the field. And, Andy Isabella, maybe even because of the return ability, again,
Right.
that special teams aspect. It's all about what's in their minds with this new kickoff and special teams as a whole.
Yeah, I think if they keep 6, it's going to be more of a special teams kind of guy, whether it's, like you said, shorter, bigger body, can go out there and throw blocks, or a Hamler or an Isabella that can go out there and return.
Mm-hmm.
I think Hamler ruined his chance after that muff kickoff. You can't muff in the NFL. It's just, you're not going to make the team. And on top of that, Hardy went out there and proved.
Yeah.
I mean, he was averaging what, 10, 15 a pop after, like, I mean, he looked good out there. So he proved that he can do it, and that there's no reason to even keep a guy like KJ Hamler or even Andy Isabella, who hasn't had much opportunity, but
Mm-hmm.
Andy Isabella had opportunity last year, didn't show too much, showed a little bit. Same thing in the preseason. He's had a few touches, but not a lot. Hasn't showed me anything, at least.
Yeah.
And then a guy like Daquan Hardy, who's just, obviously he's a young guy, rookie. He's been showing stuff on defense. I think there's a lot more value keeping him than, I mean, I think they'll keep him regardless, but there's a lot more value putting him back there than the other two.
One of my favorite returns so far this year, obviously that's been a big thing to pay attention to in the preseason for the Bills, was the play where he got hit and he held on to the ball. I mean, he got hit hard and he held on to the ball and did not drop it. And that was like huge for me. I'm like, yes, that is the guy I want out there, because the last thing you want to do is cough that ball up or make a mistake. And even if you're willing to put yourself in harm's way to try and make a play, you at least have to hold on to that ball. And that's exactly what he did. So to me,
I think
that
as
was
a
an
rookie, he's
play.
going to get better at the returning
Right.
as well. And when we talk about Hardy, because he's fielding a lot of things at the 4-yard line and things like that, and running backwards and just doing a lot of things that you will coach out of him, hopefully at some point, where it's like, dude, I know you're a dynamic playmaker and you really want to do this, but you know, we also need to just let that go in the end zone and get the ball at, you know, at the 20. So
I think they're all trying too hard to win the job right now, right, in the preseason. But the fact of the matter is, you can dance around, do all that all you want, as long as you don't make the ultimate mistake. And we saw KJ Hamler do that, and Daquan Hardy, even as a rookie, might get some leeway there, although he hasn't needed it, right? So, that's not good for, you know, the likes of KJ Hamler.
But has also played, you know, defense, and they have him playing outside cornerback a little bit in the preseason, and just testing him at every step of the way. So we're going to get to that position in just in a little bit here. Tight ends, we had Knox, Kincaid, Morris. Obviously, Morris is an unknown right now as far as what his injury status is, which begs the question. Now, look, this is a overall podcast. 4 people kind of had their hands in it, and you know, so it's not necessarily the Lance Nelson 53, because, you know, I want to talk a little bit about the 4 tight end possibility, because we talked about it a little earlier. Tasker mentioned it, but I really think that there's a good possibility, though, if they're going to leave Shavers off anyway, that they could go with a Zach Davidson, you know, whomever they believe. And I think Davidson's shown enough to where they might believe he could get scooped up and claimed and not be able to be put on the practice squad. And for that reason, they would maybe try to carry it over, because then they can IR Quentin Morris and have him be the tight end 3. So there's still, even though there's 2 IR spots on cutdown day, those are already used up for Milano and Trubisky potentially. We don't know necessarily for Trubisky, but from everything I've heard and read, and, you know, look, I'm going to trust the banged up Bills guy, you know, Kyle, I believe his name is, and what he's saying is it could be months for Trubisky at this point with his MCL. And if that's the case, like, you got to use that spot. Those 2 spots are going to Trubisky and Milano. 1 spot's definitely going to Milano. Brandon Beane already said that basically, you know, on air. And so you got to you're going to have to keep guys here and figure out, and Beane already said this as well, that you just have to figure out who you can get through and who you can't. And the guys that you think you can get through, you know, you're going to cut and try to get them on the practice squad and still be there for elevations. And, you know, Terrell Shavers may be an easier guy than Zach Davidson. And for that reason, you may wind up with a 4 tight end 53 when you first look at it on Tuesday.
Yeah, to me, this has the potential to be a wait in the parking lot move, you know, what, as they used to say before you had the 2 IR spots, you know, designated to return. But even now, that's not enough, apparently, for at least the Bills this year with the injuries that we've had. I do think this could be, if you're right and they do use Trubisky and Milano, then you keep Quentin Morris on the roster as well as Davidson or McKitty, whichever one they think is going to be their next tight end. But I think you made it the case for Davidson that he's the one more likely to be picked up by another team if he's available. And then you cut Reed Ferguson again, knowing that he's not going anywhere, but he doesn't make the 53. And as soon as day one comes, then you can IR Quentin Morris and bring, Reed Ferguson back in, obviously, but or whichever player it is. But Ferguson has been that guy in the past multiple times. So interesting that they could still do it that way, despite this new rule. But my expectation is that this team still feels like Quentin Morris is their third tight end. So when he comes back, they're going to have an issue to deal with anyway. And whoever gets that opportunity. Another point, we've talked about tight ends, or we've talked about special teams being a factor. If Shavers or Shorter doesn't make it, maybe they keep that fourth tight end as the same type of thing. Special teams can block and, factor in the return game if needed. That's important.
Yeah, I think that's probably the only reason they would keep 4 is if they don't want to lose him by sending him to the practice squad, because I agree. I think he will get scooped up. I think he's what, 6'7". He showed things in the preseason. I think he's legit. Has a lot of learning to do, but he's definitely legit. And like you said, special teams, he's a big body. He can go out there and block. And I think if they were to keep 4, they would probably take off like a Shavers, leave 5 receivers. And then the other scenarios, like you already talked about, sending Morris to IR and having Davidson be the third guy, or do the Reed Ferguson thing like they did in prior years.
Right on. Offensive linemen, I got 9. People have made a case for 10. It's hard to leave off some of these guys. Dawkins, Edwards, McGovern, Torrance, and Brown, we know are going to make the team. I believe Vandemark and Alec Anderson are basically locks to make the team. Lyle Collins, I've been convinced by Kevin Masseri that Collins' spot is locked in based upon his contract. I'll take Kevin's word for that, maybe. And Anthony's got something to say, I believe, on that. But Cedric Van Pran Granger, I just don't think they're going to, cut a rookie right now. But it does leave some guys off here. Will Clapp, we talked about. Tylen Grable, who they've liked, is another guy that's interesting that, would be a 10th, another tackle out there, because, Anderson and Collins and Van Pran Granger are more interior guys, although Collins and Anderson can both kick out in a pinch, more so at the left tackle spot, the right tackle spot if they need. But what do you think? 9 offensive linemen and the 9 we have here.
Yeah, Lance, you saw me grimacing behind the scenes there when you mentioned Lyle Collins, just because it's not that the guy has had a career. He's had injuries he's coming back from and all that. And if he makes the roster, I hope he does well in his role, however limited that may be. But when I think about retaining talent on this team and the guys you want to keep around, Lyle Collins is like the very bottom of my list. I would pay him to leave at this point. Like, what are you doing for us? I don't think you're that valuable. Maybe he has that veteran presence in the room. That's the only factor that we are completely oblivious to, right? We're not in those meeting rooms. And maybe Sean McDermott says, just for that factor alone, he's communicating with these young guys. He has that presence. That's why we're keeping him on the team. Great. Fine. You can justify that in my mind. But Tylen Grable, I think, is the next guy on my list that I would put here instead of Lyle Collins. I want him in and Collins out. And, again, we kind of brought up Will Clapp before as another guy who's versatile, center, guard, whatever. They like those guys. And again, that veteran presence, maybe if you decide to move on from Collins, you keep Will Clapp for that reason. I think this might end up being the position where they do go 10 instead of 9, just to keep one of both Lyle Collins and Will Clapp and add in the Tylen Grable here, who we've seen a lot from this preseason actually, and yeah, a lot of growth and hype there. I don't know that he's a guy that I'm worried about getting scooped up by another team if he doesn't make it necessarily, but it could happen. And I think I'd rather, again, that I feel like he's earned his spot, whereas a Lyle Collins has shown us nothing and shown me like, yeah, you belong somewhere else, buddy. Go play for the Patriots. Go start for the Patriots, because
Yeah.
I think that's more of where he's at in his career, unfortunately, from what I've seen. Again, we're not in the rooms. I'm not there at practice every day. I don't know what's going on, but the reports haven't been great.
Yeah. I mean, Collins definitely has that scary injury past. It seems like a guy that's always injured, always sidelined, something's always wrong with him. I think if we keep 10, I think Grable will be that guy. I could see Will Clapp, but just because of Clapp's versatility. But I think they like Grable just because of his. I mean, he has a lot of room to grow. Like you said, we've already seen growth in the preseason and practices, and he's a young guy. I don't see him being scooped up either. So that might be the reason we put him to the practice squad. I think we do probably roll a 9, but if we do 10, I think Grable's the guy that gets picked up. I definitely think they also like Clapp though, because we've seen it in the past, those versatile guys that can play guard, center. The Bills like their versatility on the line. They kind of need it. They've needed it in the past. So I could see that too. That's one of the reasons that I have Alec Anderson as a lock, also because of his versatility.
Yeah, I would like to see Clapp and Grable make it, and I guess if you're doing that, you're probably taking off Shavers at that point, because I don't think you're going to be able to take away from the defense of the side of the ball to handle that. So I think you have to then roll with 5 wide, and the amount of 12 personnel this team's going to run makes it a little bit easier to maybe carry 5 wide receivers at that point, if that's what they decide to do. But I think they just need more depth on defense, and you're not going to be able to necessarily take away a defensive spot for this. But if it was Lance Nelson only, and you have to factor in financials, and Brandon Beane's really not shown that he's willing to spend much, because everything that he spends now takes away from next year's full four. I think they kind of go all in again and push their chips to the middle a little bit more next year when they have some flexibility with the dead cap off their bankroll. So that's one thing. The point that Kevin Masseri made is that Collins' cap number plus another guy that you sign if you don't have Collins on the roster, you're picking up somebody else's contract. So that's a net $3 million or so of money that you're paying to not have the guy on the roster, which like I say, one thing or another. But with the financials, that's why I lean towards having him in. I haven't seen anything impressive necessarily from him, or read anything or heard anything that all I've heard is that he's been stuck in the mud and he hasn't been moving well and those kind of things. So we'll see. If personally, Tylen Grable and Will Clapp keeping 10 and 5 receivers, I would sign up for that. But we'll see. We'll see kind of what happens. Again, only a few short days away. We have a game tomorrow, and then on Tuesday we'll find out. And speaking of Kevin Masseri, just want to give a shout out, a special episode of Going Deep with I believe Syracuse and Masseri will be on, and rumblings of Dave Myers signing on Tuesday as well. So keep your eyes peeled for that out there if you're in the built-in Buffalo community and love to watch some of those guys. Let's flip it, as I would say, let's roll the coverage here on triple coverage over to the defensive side of the ball here. And 6 defensive ends: Rousseau, Miller, Epinesa, Smoot, Solomon, and Jonathan, with 4. Let's tackle the defensive line as a whole: Oliver, Jones, Johnson, and Carter. Initially, I thought Deshaun Williams would make it, and I had only 5 edge rushers without Kingsley Jonathan making it. But I think the special teams ability of Kingsley, what he showed there against Pittsburgh and things, just has me believing that they're going to go 6 and 4. So what do you guys think? And any other players you'd swap out or whatnot? I mean, we have Cameron Klein, we have Casey Toohill, but What do you think?
Yeah, I hit a home run here. So this was my May picks for these two for the defensive line, right? My May 53-man roster. I said with Smoot, the contract that he had just been given at the time, that was like he was going to make the roster, and he had some versatility from the past that we knew about. I liked him as the guy over Williams, so I had this exact combination of defensive line, including Kingsley Jonathan, who I said was that last guy for me. If there was one that I was worried about, it was Kingsley Jonathan. And I still believe that if something happens where some surprise cut and they're willing to come to Buffalo on a cheap deal, as a pass rusher, then it could take that Kingsley Jonathan spot away for that guy.
Right.
And that's what I said then, and that's still what I believe now. But Jonathan has certainly shown enough again that he deserves to be on this team, and SU guy, woohoo! So gotta keep him
Absolutely.
there, right? So gotta appreciate that. And yeah, I do think this room, it's going to work out well. If this is what we go into week 1 with, and I'd actually be surprised if somebody else makes it in there other than the guys we have, unless it's that outside guy that I mentioned.
Yeah, I initially had Kingsley Jonathan off of my initial list. I just didn't see him making the final roster. I mean, I had a guy like
Ooh,
Put some respect on the orange, baby.
Texas Orange in
Lance
the
was the one
house
that
here.
turned me. Lance turned me because of his special teams ability.
Mhm.
And I've always liked Kingsley Jonathan. I mean, he's shown what he can do in the past. But he's also at the same time always been more of a up and down practice squad, up to the team, back and forth kind of guy.
Mhm.
But this year I could see him finally breaking through and being on that team and being one of those rotational guys that the Bills like to use. Obviously, we have a pretty deep pass rush. I would like to see a guy like Deshaun Williams make it. I don't think he will. I don't think there's enough spots for him. He has to prove it tomorrow in a big way. But
Mm.
yeah, I think that list that we have those are the 10 guys that are going to make it.
Right on. Someone's asking about the shirt I said earlier. Buffalo Go is a sponsor of Built in Buffalo, so go check out Buffalo Go for. I don't know if they have this design still up or not, but yeah, go check out Buffalo Go, and they do. We also have a Built in Buffalo shop on Built in and Buffalo Go's platform. Excuse me. So check out builtinbuffalostore.com as well while you're over there, and get a nice Buffalo Go or Built in Buffalo logo tee and some other things that we have going on over there. All right. The hardest part I had here was the back seven, and we'll start with linebacker. Without Milano there, we went with 5 on our projection. I don't love that necessarily, because I just think that the depth is needed after things that happened last year. Yolofosio hasn't necessarily shown me a ton of things yet, but I think you don't want to necessarily expose the rookie to being claimed. Joe Andreessen we talked about, so let's talk about that. He's on the 53 here for us. And then it's a matter of, I thought, and the reason I thought that 5 could be possible is that your Deion Jones and Balin Spectors will get to the practice squad if you want them to. I don't think people are going to be knocking down the door to claim those guys. And so I thought that this was your easiest path to keep the guys that you think need to be on the roster. And then I still think Deion Jones could be there for an elevation, or if they want Balin Spector, he hasn't necessarily, he did get the chance to be the Mike in a couple of games here, and I'm not sure. It seems like Joe Andreessen maybe outplayed that in my opinion. So Spector looking at a practice squad spot potentially, and then that elevation, if they need him for the numbers game. So, 5 linebackers: Bernard, Dorian Williams, Nicholas Morrow, Yolofosio, and Joe Andreessen are what we have as our triple coverage linebackers on the 53. What do you think about that?
Well, what immediately stands out to me is what you said, Deion Jones being not on this list as a veteran who could play multiple positions and has started. To me, the one that competes with that is Nicholas Moreau, also a veteran, also has starting experience. I think that that is, for some reason, this entire preseason, offseason, it has been a mystery to me as to how they feel about those two guys. And again, I'm going through secondary coverage most of the time. I'm not watching practice every day or anything. But Nicholas Moreau and Deion Jones, it seemed like Jones has been playing with the threes and like way down. And I've tried to reach out to people and be like, why? What's going on with this guy? I thought he was going to make the roster just based on his veteran experience. And it seems like through what the coaches are showing us that they don't value him as much as I thought. But the same could be said about a Nicholas Moreau, brought in basically for special teams and as a guy who in an emergency can play. You like to have a guy like that on the roster, but what has he shown this offseason, and what is the team feeling about him? Those two, I feel you could swap out at any point. If it was Jones and Moreau was on the practice squad, that wouldn't surprise me, or vice versa. Now, it also wouldn't surprise me if another team did poach those guys, just because the same reason we wanted them, some other team might want them for that as well. Ulofoshio as a draft pick, I always felt like he would need to be rostered just to be protected, unless they were going to do the stash him on the IR kind of thing. But obviously he's healthy now, so I don't know that they would do that. And we already talked about Andreessen and how he's earned his spot really on this roster and probably will in the game tomorrow as well. So linebacker is a tough one. I think because of the injury, it wouldn't surprise me if they actually kept 6 and kept Deion Jones and Moreau. But now you're talking about doing some type of roster gymnastics here where you're only going 5 wide receivers, 9 offensive linemen to keep that extra linebacker. So I wouldn't necessarily like that, but I could see them, justifying that based on special teams play and just the need at the position overall. But yeah, I like this group. I wouldn't be upset if this is what it ends up being.
That's the crazy part about it, because if you bring it back up, it's like, well, now we've got 6 corners and 5 safeties, and it's like, I don't know how you could leave Cam Lewis off. I don't know how you could leave Dave Party off. So you make a good point. You're looking at the 9 offensive linemen with 5 wide receiver comment, and that's one of the places that we didn't really get to. We kind of went with it and thought that the 6 and 9 on offense, and then the 5 linebackers, just because again the ease of maybe getting a guy to a practice squad. I think Deion Jones may even have the veteran status where he doesn't necessarily need to clear whatnot, and so that also makes it easier. But yeah, Tasker, obviously you're a part of this makeup of this roster decision, things like that. So what did you think about the linebackers as we went through it? Do you have anything more to add to that?
Yeah, I'm with you on Deion Jones. When we first signed him, I mean, I didn't necessarily view him as a lock, but I definitely thought he was going to make the team just because of that name. What I've seen from him in the past, obviously he's an older guy, veteran, probably slowed down a touch. That's what it seems like from just what things I've been hearing. But I could see them keeping. I could see them taking a guy like Jamarcus Ingram, who we had on our list, off. But that's another guy that has just played into his he played into earning a spot. So I don't think they'll do that.
Deion Jones is playing deep into fourth quarters of preseason games too. So let's
just
make sure
that's
clear.
Not a good
this
sign,
is not
right?
something that is going well for him in Buffalo, in my opinion, based upon those things.
Yeah. And then just like we said, Spectre, he's had his opportunity. He had an opportunity last year with all the injuries. He'll probably be
hurt again this year. So.
Yeah, he's had injury problems too. He probably won't get picked up off of the practice squad, so I imagine he won't make the team. And yeah, I mean I think we keep 5. I don't think we keep 6. Only reason I think we keep 6 is because of our injury past in the linebacker position.
Right, which you have elevations and things like that you can do. So it's not like you're not going to be able to on game days. You could still have 6 there, and they can work through it. But as it stands, like on Tuesday, this is I guess not necessarily what's going to be their week 1 of the NFL season. This is what it might look like after Tuesday's cut downs and that kind of thing. So I just want to differentiate that. Like this isn't necessarily what we're thinking. Goat rolls into the Cardinals game. and maybe we should have denoted that at the beginning. But I think this is kind of what they're going to have to do potentially coming out of Tuesday's cut downs. For me, this is more of the roster construction I see, and then they can manipulate it how they need. If they feel like they can stash somebody that we're not, we talked about Yolofosio, but if they stash him on IR for some reason, even though he's healthy, I wouldn't expect that. But I guess if they still wanted to go that route and have Inspector and Jones in there to make 6 with Andreessen, that definitely a possibility. But it's a numbers game at this point, and I don't envy Brandon Beane's job at this point of the season. This is always one of the things I struggle with most, to say, like, okay, how are you going to get this guy on the roster? How do you, and that's where you have to think more about money, about, playing the game of practice squad and claiming, and who has the veteran status to get through all this stuff, and maybe who doesn't. So Douglas, Benford, Johnson, Elam, Ingram, and Hardy, I think is pretty well set in my opinion. But is there anybody that you would not keep here from the corners? I think there's 6 there that all play their roles and pretty solid on this team.
Yeah, I think that's pretty locked in there, I would say. Go ahead.
I was just going to say how far we've come from. I mean, this is the guys I've predicted, both cornerback and safety, way back, and I love that they're all still there, right? That means they're healthy, right? We're not talking about linebacker where we had the Milano injury. These guys are all healthy, and they've all contributed. How far we've come from months ago when people were questioning the cornerback position, and I was somebody who was confident, and I said, look, Elam is going to be better. He was a first-round talent for a reason. He's shown us that this offseason, and he's earned that rotational third cornerback for outside corners job, right? And we've seen Daquan Hardy and Ingram earn their roles as backup guys, and Hardy not just as the return guy, So I'm even more confident in cornerback than I was then, and they're healthy and it's good. So I'm happy about that. Same with the safety room, although they're not as healthy on the field, but these are the guys that I wanted to see make the team. A Cam Lewis might have been the bottom of the barrel guy there, but I feel like he's stepped up when those other guys have been gone, and enough where the team is saying, okay, there's a reason we've had Cam Lewis on our team this long, and it's because of that versatility. And now he's, proven that he's good enough to play and spot and fill in for that safety position when needed. Not sure who the starter's going to be still in that bunch. Not sure where my confidence is yet in that bunch, because we just haven't seen them. And I'm not a big Taylor Rapp confidence guy myself based on what I saw last year with the Bills. So safety I'm worried about, but this is what I expected to see. Cornerback I'm confident in and I feel good about.
Yeah, I think we have some good depth. But like you said, not really anyone that kind of sticks out as a number one, obviously, like Rasul Douglas does. But I like Cam Lewis's versatility. He can play pretty much anywhere, and we've seen that in the past. And then a guy like Daquan Hardy, I think it was him last game who he could have had 2 interceptions. He had 2 jumped up and it went straight through his hands. So even a guy like him, he has shown a lot more, maybe not with the stats because none of them are getting interceptions, but they're all getting pass breakups and they're all flying all over the place and proving that they belong on the team.
Yeah, I think Ingram was in coverage deep down the field on Pickens against Pittsburgh too, which was a very good, led him to the sideline, gave him no room to make the catch, and just played that ball perfectly. Pickens ended up catching the thing, but he had no room to stay in bounds. And so just, great coverage there from a young player on a top tier wide receiver. Pickens isn't necessarily top 5, but Pickens is a wide catch radius, and I think he's earned some respect in this league as a wide receiver.
Yeah, that's the thing. They're covering. They're not covering nobodies. They're covering George Pickens, DJ Moore against the Bears. They're covering good receivers.
Yeah. All right. Looking for Kebby, you can go out and purchase a Daquan Hardy jersey for sure. He'll be on the team for a couple of years, I think. Safeties were Rapp, Hamlin, Bishop, Edwards, and Lewis. I think Mike Edwards is going to be your day one starter so long as he's healthy next to Rapp. I just think that's what they're like it seems like if they didn't think that was going to be the case, like why wouldn't they have like gotten rid of him and like signed a Justin Simmons or something and just gotten the sure thing? They're bringing in all these like Kareem Jackson, Terrell Burgess, who's now hurt. D Delaney was brought in at some point earlier in the season, and he's done. He's not there. Kendall Williamson. So like, I don't know. It just seems like they're keeping that thing wide open for Mike Edwards. I don't see DeMar Hamlin hasn't necessarily done anything to deter me from saying like he deserves that spot. And we have him. Even though it's labeled depth chart, I don't necessarily think that this is the order we have them in the pecking order, but it's Hamlin has gotten all of those reps so far, but I really think it's due because of the injuries to Bishop and Edwards. And I think at the end of the day, if Edwards is healthy week 1, you'll see him there with Cole Bishop ready to back up and DeMar Hamlin in the 4th safety role. Cam Lewis, obviously special teams, is going to be there. And if they need him to play on defense, he'll suffice in a pinch, but he's kind of, taken over. I kind of gave that 6th linebacker, that Taylor Matakevich spot, kind of what for me went to Cam Lewis here on this roster shakeup.
Yeah. The one thing I think that this is the hardest position for the Bills to adjust to this offseason. You lose both your longtime starters in Hyde and Poyer, both very consistent players, guys who knew this. Now I think we're going to shift to something we haven't seen in a long time, which is not 2 guys who are out there for every play, right? And that's for both positions. I don't think Rapp or starter number 2 is going to play 99% of the snaps, right? I think it's going to be more like 50-50 or 75-25 with Hamlin being out there as the starter, but not, the most snaps maybe, or the opposite. Edwards playing 50% of the snaps and Hamlin playing 50. Bishop, I think, won't be worked in until later, especially because he missed time. He's a rookie. He's got way too much to learn. He'll make the roster, but I don't expect him to get time. And Lewis might even get some sprinkle in there because he's been playing the most of any of the guys. And you might have the confidence in him, knowing that he's been on this team and knows the role to finally go out there and, get a bigger chunk of the snaps. But it's going to be strange for us as Bills fans to experience again a true safety room and not just, oh yeah, there's the 2 guys and one who can fill in if one of them needs a break, right? But yeah, so I'm again the room that I'm feeling the least confidence in, but there's still a lot of guys who can get it done. It's not like this is some big hole in the defense.
Yeah, and the biggest reason I don't have any lack of confidence in that room is just because our coaching staff and those guys, both the defensive coordinator, Bobby Babich, head coach Sean McDermott, and all those guys have a great track record of developing those guys in those positions. So for me, that helps ease a lot of the concern, even though the names might not be there for you and the name recognition might not be there. I think that coaching staff and their pedigree and their past allows me to put my concerns at ease. All right. I think Tyler Bass is going to be the kicker. I had a hot take. and Sam Martin, the punter, and Reed Ferguson, the long snapper. And that brings us to 53 there. And going on an hour and a half, I don't want to belabor that too much, but I want to give you guys each a couple of minutes. If there's anything else Bills related you've heard throughout the week or anything to kind of, get off your mind or just anything you want to say out into the interwebs here as we have this platform and even go so far as to predict a score for tomorrow or something fun.
Well, one thing that we didn't discuss that I actually did start thinking about today, the NFL came out with a lot of suspensions for conduct today, right? They just released a bunch of names and said, this guy's suspended 1 game, this guy's suspended 2 games, this guy's suspended 5 games. Not a lot of details as to why, but we know that usually you're in the news for bad reasons, right? In the NFL, giving them a bad name, usually last season, right? It takes a full year for the NFL to do their thing and actually hand down a suspension. One thing that I thought about very Bills relevant, Von Miller, right? We saw this happen with Von Miller last year. He had an off the field incident. It's been a little bit of time. We don't know what the NFL's thought about it. Yeah, charges were dropped and the story didn't get straight or whatever. But we knew at the time that the NFL was going to be looking into it and that it could lead to the suspension for Von Miller. And the fact that nothing came out today at least gave me like, okay, maybe he's clear. Maybe we're good to go, or maybe they're still looking into it. But that was something that I hadn't thought about in a long time until I started seeing those stories come through today.
Yeah, and obviously nothing coming through on Rashee Rice yet, which is a
Crazy.
little bit weird. But you know, you got a couple of guys who are free agents getting suspended here. A couple of corners, I believe. I just had it here. Chris Claybrooks and J.C. Jackson both getting suspended, and then Ulrich Jackson 2 games from the Rams, and Zay Jones looks
5
like
games, yeah.
you know the domestic battery in mid-November and things like that. He's had a little bit of trouble here and there depending on his situation with mental health and things like that. But I thought he turned a corner and had been doing the right things. But there you go. The NFL takes its time and comes down with a decision. So, yeah, Tasker, anything from the week we didn't talk about, or anything just in general moving forward? At least tell people where they can find you on social media and things, and anything else you want to say.
Yeah, I mean, just moving forward, I think there's definitely a lot of people, include like a lot of Bills fans, who are worried and skeptical, but at the end of the day, I mean, Josh Allen's the quarterback, so and we've got some guys on the team still. I mean, look what Rousseau did last week, 2.5 sacks in like 3 drives he played. I mean, I think we're gonna be all right.
Yes, right. I mean, I've been preaching that all off season, it seems, right? This team is damn good, and it's a Super Bowl contender, regardless of who makes this 53-man roster, right?
Yeah.
Right.
The team, the roster, these players, they're coached up. The defense is damn good. The offense is damn good. This team is not suddenly all off the radar, as ESPN would tell you, or some of the major outlets with talking heads who want to get clicks, right? This
Yeah.
team is dang good and is in Super Bowl talks this season. Don't let the other people fool you. Don't let, oh, you lost Diggs and now you got Curtis Samuel. Yeah, these guys have well enough to be better than they were last year, in my mind. So be optimistic, people, because, when we did the schedule prediction, again, way back when, I said the Bills 12 was the number that I expected, and 13 was what I actually predicted when it came down to saying, will they win or lose this game? So I'm still feeling very good about that prediction and the fact that the Bills are leading the AFC East. So keep the confidence up.
Pro Football Network put out a graphic with AFC contenders' biggest weaknesses, and the Bills, they listed the pass rush, and appreciate our girl T for putting that in the group chat earlier as well, just to give us some discussion points. Is like, if the Bills pass rush is their biggest weakness this season, they're going to be damn
all
good,
right.
like you mentioned, because I would think it would be more about the wide receiver depth, now the linebacker depth, and things like that, rather than pass rush. But if they think that pass rush is down this year for the Bills, then let them think that, and teams are going to be in for a rude awakening, because I think what you saw from Rousseau is no joke. I think there's definitely I think that there's going to be enough there. Epinesa may not be the most prolific pass rusher, but he did have 6.5 sacks last season. Can improve on that. Give him 8 to 10. Von Miller still going to do something out there. He's not going to be bump on the log. I'm going to keep, myself tempered a little bit, because I went full bore last offseason. I've been saying this, but I do think he has the potential to go double-digit sacks this year. He still has that juice in him.
Yeah.
And so with this defensive line, the interior of Ed Oliver, Daquan Jones, and added, Dwayne Carter and Austin Johnson, I think those guys do end up getting enough pressure consistently to put that pass rush argument to bed.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, I think we're even arguably more
Yeah.
have more depth than
Yes.
the past few years, and
Yes.
that's what's been killing us because we lose one or two of our star guys, and all of a sudden we're not that good anymore. But now we have several guys that can step up, and I just don't see where the skepticism is coming from. I mean,
Thank
Josh
you.
Allen's quarterback, so it doesn't.
All off season, I've been saying that the depth
Yep,
is actually better this year. This team is actually better. The
yep,
defensive line is actually better than last year.
100%.
You have way
Yep.
more depth. Those guys coming in, they're better. They're healthy.
yep.
Even with Matt Milano out, although Matt Milano is probably, in my mind, the best player on our defense, and even with him out, it did not shake my confidence because I know that this team is that good. And we saw last year that Sean McDermott was able to coach them through that, even without the depth that we have at linebacker now and the people behind who can step up in that situation. So yeah, again, this team, let the haters hate. I've just been saving them, screenshotting them, reposting them, posting a meme of somebody laughing at them because when it comes down to it, all these people who are predicting the Jets to be good or Miami to beat the Bills in the division, and the Bills not even to make the playoffs, some people, or that's just hilarious. They don't know our team. They look at what they've seen in the offseason and they think on paper, oh, that's a big deal for this Bills team. They don't know what they're talking about. Stay informed, stay confident. This team is going to exceed what the media thinks. And week to week, they're going to have to eat their own words.
Right on. All right, guys. Well, thank you very much for everyone who tuned in. Nearly 300 viewers now, and appreciate all the views. Check out Built in Buffalo's full lineup of content. Sunday, we got Izzy on the Red Zone Report. Monday is Buffalo Against the World with Kulu and Cousin Brad. Tuesday, we're doing Spaces on X if you guys can join in there. Sponsored by Monster Energy, the official energy partner of Built in Buffalo. And then Wednesdays, we have Going Deep podcast, which is actually going to be on Tuesday this week, but normally on Wednesdays. And then the Hoof podcast with our friend Anthony Romeo here and Eric Brown. You guys have been doing very good. I'm very impressed since we were able to bring you on to the network and appreciate all the great insight you guys bring. So
Wow, that's a great
glad that you had a
community.
day off and glad you had a day off yesterday and were able to come in fresh and
Yes.
pinch hit tonight. So again, I really appreciate that. If you want to just give a shout out to the handles of yourself and maybe the Hoof and things like that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, my handle's on the screen at Anthony Romeo NY. Love to interact on Twitter, and you can find me on Facebook as well. Just interacting with the community in general. Built in Buffalo has been awesome. Eric and I are glad to be on board and doing content with you guys. It's been awesome, and in the chat and everything. And we're on Thursday nights. We've been going at 7:30, but we might shift that to 8:30 when the season starts. Just for dad reasons. Both of us have young babies now, so trying to make that an ideal time for bedtimes and all of that. But again, putting out that content. We'll be back next week. We're also doing our divisional preview for the entire NFL. We're going to do a special episode for that as well. So stay tuned for that content. And the handle for the show is at the Hoof Pod. You can catch both of us there as well.
Right on. And Tasker will be hanging with the triple coverage crew here, and we'll be popping in from time to time. And appreciate you coming on this week here, Tasker, and look forward to you, continuing to, get your feet wet with this content creating thing. Obviously, if you see, graphics around Built in Buffalo, Tasker has done quite a few of them, not all of them, but he does do a great job. So appreciate all the one of the men behind the scenes here that may not get as much recognition as they deserve. There's plenty of those to go around, and just to be able to highlight one here tonight with us on the show. I really appreciate the time, Tasker.
Yeah, thank you. It was fun.
All right. Well, that does it for us. And if you guys would, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, like and follow the Facebook page, like and repost on X there, and give us a follow there as well. And from all of us at Built in Buffalo, we'll say go Bills.